It's not uncommon here on YouTube to see professional video game critics getting dogpiled when they give a game a review score that differs wildly from the community consensus. And that made me wonder, which critical publications have the best and worst track record when it comes to echoing the sentiment of the average gamer? Turns out GameSpot is the best. Video over. No, but the real questions are 1. How did I come to that conclusion? And 2. Who even cares anyway? Second question is easier, actually. First, I think professional critical reviews are, to this day, still pretty useful to consumers. Yes, major outlets are rightfully viewed with a lot of distrust. They have conflicts of interest. But the problem with YouTube reviewers, for example, is that they only cover games that interest them or that will get views, and they almost never give actual numeric scores because they don't want to be harassed. Major outlets review more games and are brave enough to give straightforward scores, so you can just look at the latest dozen releases and know at a glance what's worth playing. And the other benefit of professional critics is that they are usually a lot better at articulating what players experience. Normal people giving casual reviews don't always have much diversity of game experience, and they often lack a good vocabulary for explaining what's good and bad about a game. But the other reason it matters is that professional critical reviews seem to have a big influence on the game industry. Review scores influence a game's early success to a degree, and corporate morons seem to take critical feedback very seriously and put a lot of effort into appealing to critics and getting high scores. And that means it may be advantageous to gamers to know which critics are the most out of touch so that bad critics can be discredited and good critics can be patronized. If you can pressure the critical landscape into better reflecting player sentiment, then the game company obsession with critical feedback becomes less damaging to games. But moving on, how did I determine which publications were in tune with the masses and which were submitting reviews from the mirror universe? Well, the critic scores are easy enough to get from Metacritic or the publications themselves. I just looked up 100 recently released games and found the publications that scored at least half of them. But then I needed to plot the critic scores against an objective average player score. So where did I get that? Well, from IMDb.com, of course. Yes, I know what you're thinking. First, you had no idea that the Internet Movie Database also has pages for video games, which, fun fact, are not movies, despite what some game developers seem to believe. Second, you're thinking video game scores from IMDb have to be useless because nobody rates video games on IMDb, and the people that do are weird and their scores can't mean anything. So first, now you know that IMDb has game pages, congratulations. And second, you're about to know that IMDb has the best rating system in the known universe. For many years, IMDb has been a trusted source for non-critical movie ratings. Its top 250 film list is very highly cited, and for good reason. A study was done a number of years ago that collected ratings from regular people on a number of movies and showed that IMDb scores reflect the average person's film assessment significantly better than alternatives like the critic and audience scores found on Rotten Tomatoes or Metacritic. I even checked this myself for fun, taking my ratings for 100 films and plotting them against IMDb ratings, Rotten Tomatoes critic and audience scores, and Metacritic critic and audience scores. And the best correlation with my scores was the IMDb ratings. Once I found out IMDb had game scores, I did the same thing with video game scores. I compared my own subjective scores versus IMDb scores, Metacritic critic and audience scores for games, as well as Steam ratings for games. And once again, IMDb was clearly the best in terms of predicting what I, a normal person presumably, feels about a given video game. Steam was the worst, by the way. Steam ratings are garbage, please ignore them. Anyway, that's all to say that IMDb is the undisputed king of quantifying the sentiment of normal people, and IMDb's rating supremacy is not an accident. It's because they have a very good system for counting votes. Basically, they don't count all votes equally. If you seem like an idiot with an agenda, then your vote counts for less. Their exact methodology is a secret to prevent it from being gamed, but it's definitely been observed that 1 and 10-star ratings count for less. For example, for their top 250 movies list, they reportedly use Bayesian averages to prevent new films with early buzz from appearing, and I also seem to remember hearing that only users with a minimum number of reviews and or a minimum account age have their reviews counted for that list. So those are the kinds of protections you expect from IMDb. The people behind the site know that people get political about movies and games. They expect a bunch of morons to make new accounts just so that they can rate a particular listing and leave a bunch of 1-star reviews to try and manipulate the score, and they throw those scores in the garbage to make their aggregate scores meaningfully accurate. So if you want to know what normal people really think of a video game, go to IMDb. But the site's not really known for game reviews, so games have to be out for a few days to get a real score there. So if you want an estimate of what normal people are going to think at release time, then you'll have to go to a critical publication. And the question is, which one? So I correlated the IMDb game scores with the critic scores, and here are the results. These are the best publications. They all match the IMDb audience score the majority of the time. GameSpot and Digital Trends have been particularly good. For example, they were both willing to give The Lord of the Rings Gollum a score of 20, even though their Metacritic peers averaged a more generous score of 33. They correlated about 60% with IMDb scores. These are the worst publications, which all diverge from the IMDb score more than half the time. IGN is definitely the most well-known and is often picked on, but it's not even close to being the most out of touch. Sure, IGN gave Skull and Bones a 70. You know, we all make mistakes. But PC Gamer, for example, not only gave Skull and Bones a 68, but it gave Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League a 67, the recent Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2 a 60, and the aforementioned The Lord of the Rings Gollum a 64. But the publisher that needs to stop making reviews and start selling the substance they're huffing is Eurogamer, who awarded a generically insulting score of 60 to Final Fantasy XVI, Alan Wake 2, Black Myth Wukong, and Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree. So if you find yourself at odds with the consensus and are looking for a contrarian review, go to Eurogamer, I guess. Making this video was fun for me. At first I wanted to include YouTube reviewers for comparison until I realized that they're all cowards and none of them actually score games with numbers. Some publications I now trust more, and Metacritic I trust a lot less, because as I was looking up critics and scores, I realized that multiple so-called critics giving game scores are actually, no joke, just YouTube channels with less than 1,000 subscribers. Why their opinion is being included on such a popular scoring site, I have no idea. Metacritic has no officially published criteria for who gets to be a critic included in their Metascore. The more you know, I guess.